Hey, what's up guys? It's DarkArmedDuelist, and today we're going to be doing a Zombie World deck profile. So I'm really excited to do this for you guys, because this deck is a really awesome deck that constantly keeps reviving back our cards from the graveyard to ultimately swarm the board with all sorts of really powerful zombies. This deck has really been benefiting recently with a lot of the generic support we've been getting, and this deck just keeps getting stronger and stronger. So without further ado guys, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell there so you can become part of Notification Squad, and definitely check out the Patreon down in the description below for all those awesome rewards, like getting your name description in a single video, getting a signed cards mail, and even getting to request a deck profile every single month to your patron, along with test hands. So without further ado, let's get straight on into this. So first off, we're going to be playing 2 copies of the boss monster, Doom King Baller Draught. So Baller Draught is a awesome card for this deck that has the ability that during the standby phase, if a face-up card is in the field spell zone and this card is in the graveyard, you can special summon this card back to your side of the field in defense position every single turn, which is really good because this card just keeps coming back over and over and over again. It also has some really good effects that once per chain, when a zombie monster effect is activated except a Doom King Baller Draught activates its effect, then you get to activate one of the following effects as a quick effect, either negate the effect or banish a monster from the field or graveyard, which is really good because it essentially outs just about every single card in the field because it can banish a card from the field and it doesn't target, which is really good. We then play 2 copies of Necro World Banshee. This card is basically here to banish from your graveyard to get to your copy of your Zombie World onto your side of the field. I like to play 1 to 2 of this card in my Zombie World builds, but currently I'm really liking 2 copies of this card. We then play 2 copies of Glow Up Bloom. Glow Up Bloom is really good in this deck too, because if this card is sent to the graveyard, you can banish this card from the grave and to add a level 5 or higher zombie monster from your deck to your hand. Or if Zombie World is in your field spell zone, then you get to special summon it from your deck instead, which is usually going to be your copy of your Baller Draught that you're trying to special summon out with your copy of Glow Up Bloom. We then play 3 of the best card in the entire deck, and that is 3 copies of Unizombie. Unizombie is the card that you want to see in every single hand because it is the best normal summon in the whole deck. Because what it does is you can target a face-up monster on the field, discard any card from your hand, and then increase that target's level by 1. You can also target a face-up monster on the field that you control, but for the rest turn that the cards on your side of the field cannot attack except for zombie monsters, and it increases that card's level by 1. But it also has a really good extender effect that also you can send a zombie monster from your deck to the graveyard, and if you do, increase the target's level by 1 again, which is really good to be able to level manipulate your cards. You don't have to target the same card with that effect, but it's really good to help you get this card to a level 4 or even a level 5 to go into some really amazing plays, and it overall is the best normal summon in the entire deck because it's a walking Foolish Burial. We then play 2 copies of Shiranui Solitaire. Shiranui Solitaire is a really good card because you're going to be treating this card to go into your copy of Unizombie all the time in this deck, and it's a fantastic card. We then play 2 copies of Mizuki. Mizuki can banish itself from the graveyard to special summon a zombie back to your side of the field, which is really helpful for this deck just to get those monsters back onto your side of the field. We play 2 copies of Gozuki, which is a walking Foolish Burial. I bumped this card up to 2 in this build because it's really helpful, because during the main phase, you can send a zombie type monster from your deck to the graveyard. Now that's every single turn. You either want to see this or your copy of Unizombie to have that walking Foolish Burial on your side of the field. And it also has the ability to, if this card is sent to the graveyard, you can banish a zombie type monster from your graveyard to special summon a zombie monster from your hand, which helps you out a lot if you have a copy of, say, Doom King in your hand or something else that you want to get on the field. We then play a single copy of Plague Spreader Zombie. Plague Spreader Zombie comes in very handy with our copy of Needle Fiber later on, as being one of the better Needle Fiber targets in this particular deck, along with your copy of your Glow Up Bloom. We then play 2 copies of Danger Nessie. So I'm playing a couple of Danger cards in this deck because they're really good extenders for this build to be able to just special summon from your hand. If you guys are unfamiliar with what Dangers do, you reveal them in your hand, your opponent randomly picks a card from your hand, and if it is the Danger monster, you discard it and get an effect. If it's not the Danger monster that they picked, then you get to special summon that danger to your side of the field and draw a card. So each one of your danger monsters has a unique effect if they are discarded. So the effect of Danger Nessie is if this card is discarded, then you get to add from your deck to your hand another danger card, which is really good. We then play 2 copies of Danger Mothman. Danger Mothman, if this card is discarded, both players get to draw a card, and then both players discard a card, which is really good for us because a lot of our zombies want to be in the graveyard anyways, and this card is a really good extender. Play a single copy of Danger Noodle. This card, regardless if it gets discarded or not, it's going to special summon itself. And then a single copy of Danger Jackalope, because if this card is discarded, then you get to special summon another danger monster from the deck, which helps out the deck a lot just to get to those extending plays for this particular card. So that's it for the monsters. Let's get into the hand traps of the deck, because we're playing a couple of hand traps in this build. So for the hand traps, we're actually going to be playing a couple of zombies with it, and it's going to be 3 copies of Ash Blossom. Ash Blossom is a fantastic card in this deck because Ash Blossom has a very unique effect that's basically going to stop your opponent from touching the deck, which is really good. We then play 2 copies of Effect Veiler for a card that we're playing in the extra deck, and the 2 Effect Veilers are really good because they're light monsters, first off, and second off, they are really good because they can stop effects of opponents' monsters, which can really shut down your opponent, but it really comes in handy that they're light later on. So that's it for the hand traps, guys. Let's get into the spells. So for the spells, we're going to be playing a single copy of Foolish Burial. This card is to get the exact zombie you need to the graveyard when you need it to go into your plays. We play a single copy of Instant Fusion. Instant Fusion is here to go into a couple of different cards that we play in the extra deck, but this card is a fantastic card in the deck that you've got to play at least one. And then we play 3 copies of Ready Fusion. Ready Fusion is one of the generic cards that we've been getting recently that really help this deck, because you can summon out a lot of different monsters from the extra deck with this card to get your plays really rolling in this deck. I really love 3 copies of Ready Fusion in this build. It really helps out, and I cannot recommend it enough to play 3 copies of this card. We then play 3 copies of Zombie World. Zombie World is really good and going to be the key card of the entire deck. All monsters on the field and in the graveyards become zombie monsters. Everything becomes a zombie. And also, neither player can tribute summon monsters except for zombie monsters. This is a really good effect to be able to stop a lot of different decks in the game right now, and being able to turn everything into a zombie can really mess up a lot of plays against the opponent if they're trying to have a particular type, which is really good. I love playing this card in this deck, and it shuts down so many different decks with this card. We then play 3 copies of Super Polymerization. This is what I mentioned earlier with this deck being able to out literally any card in the entire game. This Super Polymerization plus Zombie World is just absolutely nuts, especially if you have Baller Draw to be able to pop cards or banish cards on the field is just really good. The copy of Super Polymerization just lets you go into copies of stuff like your Starving Venom Fusion Dragon and your Dragon Necro Nether Soul Dragon that you play in the extra deck. So that's it for the spells, guys. Let's get into the traps. So for the traps, we're playing 3 copies of my personal favorite card in Zombie World, and it's 3 copies of Rivalry of Warlords. This card is really good because it makes it so each player can only control one type of monster, and you send all other face-up monsters on the field to the graveyard. Now this card is a really good card, but it does have a little bit of a drawback where it makes it so we can only control zombie monsters. We can't summon anything else. It does kind of work against us with the danger monsters, but you can kind of pick and choose when to activate this card when you feel like you've gone through all of your plays on your first turn. Then you can flip this card against your opponent and then basically shut down the board where they're only going to be able to control one monster that we can control all of the monsters that we need, which is really good. I love playing this card as a 3-of. If basically you end up with a copy of this card plus Zombie World, you usually instantly win unless your opponent has an out to either or of the cards, because you're just going to slow your opponent's game down so much to the point that they're not going to be able to summon a lot of cards to the field, which is why I definitely would recommend playing this card as a 3-of. So that's it for the main deck, guys. Let's get into the extra deck. So for the extra deck, we're going to be playing single copy of Vampire Sucker. This card is really good in the deck and really helps out because what this card does is if you attribute summon a monsters that for the tribute summon of a zombie monster, your opponent, you can use cards your opponent controls, or excuse me, you can tribute a zombie monster your opponent controls for the tribute summon, which is really cool. And even though you do not control it, and it also has two really good other effects. That you can target his monster in your opponent's graveyard and special summon it to your opponent's field in face down defense position or face up defense position, but it becomes a zombie monster. And if a zombie monster is special summoned from either player's graveyard, you get to draw a card. So this card comes in very helpful to give you those additional draws and just to go in for additional plays. Play a single copy of Crystron Needle Fiber. Needle Fiber is really good because it gets a tuner from the deck and helps us sync our summon later into the game with other cards, especially if we leave it on our side of the field. We can special summon out one of the really powerful cards that we have in this deck to go into some really awesome monsters later on. We then play a single copy of Anaconda because Anaconda works really well with all the fusion cards like Ready Fusion, Instant Fusion, in your copies of Super Polymerization, which is why I play this card as a 1-up. We're then playing a single copy of Boral Sword. The extra deck is very tight, and I wanted to do something a little bit different besides just playing like an access code in the extra deck. So this card is a really good extender for the deck. It's working really well for me right now to have a big boss monster in the form of a Boral Sword. You can change it out for access code if you want to, and you have an access code, and you can put in like a Nightmare, Unicorn, and Phoenix in the extra deck, which is something that I was playing earlier when I was playtesting this deck, but I did end up dropping it because I wanted to play some more synchro monsters, and with the ready fusions and the instant fusions, I just didn't have the room with all the fusion monsters in the deck to play a copy of access code. So for the fusion monsters, we're playing a single copy of Dragon Necro Nether Soul Dragon. This card is a very, very awesome boss monster for the deck. You're going to be using 2 of your opponent's zombie monsters that they control when you have Zombie World on the field to make this card. You can attack into an opponent's monster, basically reduce its attack down to 0, and then give us a token on our side of the field that has the same attack as the monster that we attacked with our copy of our Nether Soul Dragon, which is a really good effect, but it can't destroy monsters by battle. But it does generate tokens for us, which is really, really good. We then play a single copy of Starving Venom. Starving Venom is really good in this deck too, because you can make this really easily with Super Polymerization. Flame Ghost is a really good card in this deck because it helps us out with all sorts of different plays, from Synchro plays, Link plays, even Xyz plays. This card is a fantastic 1-of in this deck, and I recommend playing at least one of this card in this deck for a ready fusion target. And we're playing a single copy of Sea Monster of Thestalos. Sea Monster of Thestalos is really good because what this card is a tuner fusion monster. So you can use this card for synchro plays, you can use it for plays for your copy of Needle Fiber. It's just an overall really, really good 1-of in the deck. We're then playing a single copy of Red Eyes Zombie Dragon in the extra deck. This card is really good because this card can get absolutely huge because it has the ability that gains 100 attack for each 100 attacking events for each zombie monster on the field and in the graveyards. And when another zombie monster is destroyed by battle, you can special summon a zombie monster from either player's graveyard to your field, which just helps you OTK your opponent even faster with this deck. We then play a single copy of the Chaos Ruler. This card is one of the cards I was mentioning earlier with Effect Failure, because this card comes in very handy, because if this card is synchro summoned, you can excavate the top 5 cards from your deck, and if you do, you get to add 1 excavated light or dark monster from your deck to your hand. But the really good effect of this card is the rest of the cards that you reveal this card get sent to the graveyard. So cards like your copy of Banshee, your copy of Glow Up Bloom, Baller Draught, all of those cards will go to the graveyard, Mizuki, and it basically gives you a mill 4 off the top of your deck, which is really good on a 3k beat stick of a monster. And you can also banish your Effect Veiler and a dark monster from the graveyard to special summon this card back to your side of the field if it's in the graveyard, but banished when it leaves the field. So this card is a great card in this deck. We then play a single copy of Beals. I love playing Beals in my zombie decks. I always have, because this card cannot be destroyed by battle or by card effects. And also it's a really big card to have to deal with for your opponent, because you can just throw it in defense position. They can't destroy by battle, can't destroy by card effects, and anytime you take damage, this card gains the attack equal to the damage you took. One copy of Borreload Savage, because you can use this card very easily in the deck to be able to go into with your copy of like Needle Fiber. And this card comes in very handy because it gives you additional negations, which is why I play this card as a 1-of. I then play a single copy of Shiranui Sun Saiga. Sun Saiga is our big level 10 monster that I'm playing in this deck. It's basically a 3,500 attack point monster, and it has a really unique effect. To hit this card as special summon, you can return any number of your zombie type synchro monsters that are banished or in the graveyard to the extra deck. Then you can destroy cards your opponent controls equal to the number of cards returned, which is really good, especially with Zombie World turning everything into a zombie. We're then playing a single copy of Formula Synchron. Formula Synchron is a card that I'm summoning off my copy of Needle Fiber all the time, and then I'm going to use a level 8 monster plus my copy of Formula Synchron with Zombie World on the field to climb into my copy of Shiranui Sun Saiga, because it does become a zombie, fulfilling your requirements of Sun Saiga, and it also gives me a draw, which is really good. You can interrupt the opponent mid-turn, especially if I have zombie synchro monsters in the graveyard with Sun Saiga, which is why I play it as a 1-of to use to go into Sun Saiga during my opponent's turn. For the last card, I'm playing a single copy of Levenair the Sea Dragon. This card is a really good card in the deck that's really easy to summon with your copy of Ready Fusion, because if you Ready Fusion out the Flame Ghost and normal summon out any level 3 monster onto your side of the field, like a copy of Tsuchinoko or Jackalope, using their effects to special summon them to the field, while you have any of your zombies banished that are level 4, you can just use this card to revive them back to your side of the field, which is really, really good to be able to do. So That's it for the deck, guys. I hope you did enjoy it. It's a really awesome deck. I love this deck. I cannot emphasize that enough. It's super fun to be able to play around with, and I highly recommend that if you've never played zombies before, you will not be disappointed if you try out this build. I love the way that they play. It's one of my favorite decks of all time. If you guys haven't checked out the video for my top 10 favorite decks of all time, you definitely should, because this deck was on the list as one of them, which I love this deck. So anyways, guys, this is Dark Arm Duels. Don't forget to like, comment, subscribe, hit the bell in there so you can come by our notification squad, and we'll see you guys in the next video. See you later, guys.